Chapter 4400. In the face of the disdain of the two vice-captains, Di Baichen was unusually calm, as if the target of their disdain and ridicule was not him. That's right. In the past, several vice-captains were prepared to bear the responsibility themselves. Why don't you sign it? This way everything will be clearer. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said, in case something happens, someone will shirk the responsibility. That's funny. We won't shirk the responsibility for this kind of thing. You really think you're important? Under Bailey Hongzhuang's provocation, Xiao Rojin and the other two quickly signed their names and then left with the team. Wang Yanhan looked at the backs of Xiao Rojin and the others as they left and couldn't help but sigh. This kind of situation was not what he wanted to see. Senior, don't mind it. People should always pay the price for their arrogance. They have already signed a guarantee to prove that they insisted on this matter and it has nothing to do with you. Bailey Hongzhuang comforted. Wang Yanhan nodded slightly. I understand. In that situation just now, even if I stopped it, it would have been useless. You made them sign this responsibility letter, which helped me solve a hidden danger. He naturally understood that Di Baichen's actions were completely for his sake. Because in this way, if there really was trouble, as long as he took out this responsibility letter, Steward Wu would not blame him. However, he was the captain after all, and this kind of feeling was really not good. Wang Yanhan, don't be depressed. Actually, this is not a big deal. Yi Haomiao comforted. They just follow Xiao Rojin's lead. They just want to take this opportunity to show off in front of Xiao Rojin. Why bother with them? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at the other vice-captain. Fortunately, this vice-captain didn't leave. Otherwise, if only the 10 of them were left here, Wang Yanhan's face as the captain would really be lost. Wang Yanhan, are we going to rest here tonight? Another vice-captain, Lu Yen, asked. Wang Yanhan nodded slightly. The terrain here is still relatively safe. The risk of resting here will be slightly smaller. He had stayed in the training ground for a long time and had some experience in choosing a place to rest. Although he couldn't guarantee 100% accuracy, there was no problem most of the time. That's fine. Lu Yen smiled. Don't take it too seriously. It's safer for the 3 teams to be together. It's no problem for our 2 teams here. Anyway, we have to act separately tomorrow. It's just a little earlier. I'm just worried that they will encounter danger. Wang Yanhan sighed. But obviously it's useless for me to say anything. Let them be. Are the skeletons here really that powerful? You seem to be very afraid of these skeletons. Lu Yan's eyes fell on Wang Yanhan, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. He was not stupid. From the expressions of Wang Yanhan and the others, he could see that they were really afraid of these skeletons. Lu Yan, I'm not lying to you. Once this skeleton army appears, it's really an army. As far as I know, the skeletons of the upper realm are much more powerful than those of the lower realm because they were stronger when they were alive. Once they appear, if you don't treat them carefully, you might really lose your life. Chapter 4401. Hearing this, LV Yen nodded. I understand. If you have time, why don't you tell me about the characteristics of this skeleton army? If we encounter them after we split up, our team can also have some experience in dealing with them. Looking at LV Yan's serious appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen couldn't help but look at each other. Previously, LV Yan was the least conspicuous of the 4 vice-captains, but now, judging from LV Yan's attitude, they realized that LV Yan didn't seem to be simple. Generally speaking, such humble cultivators tended to have higher achievements than those who thought highly of themselves. Okay. Wang Yanhan nodded slightly. He naturally didn't mind explaining more about these situations, but Xiao Rojin and the others didn't want to listen. As the captain, he hoped that everyone could return safely. This was the best way to complete Steward Wu's instructions. When LV Yen and the other cultivators heard Wang Yanhan's description of the skeleton army, the expressions of the people who were still at a loss about the skeleton army suddenly changed. They didn't expect that the skeleton army would appear in such a terrifying scene. If everything was really like what Wang Yanhan said, then his previous cautiousness was indeed correct. In that terrifying pit, if he wasn't careful, the entire team would be wiped out. Captain, fortunately we're with you. After understanding this, we finally know how to deal with it. A cultivator looked at Wang Yanhan with a rueful expression. If they encountered such a situation without any understanding of the situation, it was very likely that they would be utterly defeated. Now that they had a little more understanding of the situation, at least they knew how to deal with it and wouldn't panic. Wang Yanhan smiled slightly. It's good that you're willing to believe in me. Captain, actually, we all believe in you. Although identity and status are part of it, most cultivators started from scratch. No matter how strong their background is, it can't be compared to their own strength. Everyone spoke one after another. Most of them didn't have a very strong background. They were just ordinary people in the upper realm. Even in front of Wanyan Han, they wouldn't have much of a sense of accomplishment. On the contrary, everyone could see Wanyan Han's efforts. It's good that Xiao Rojin and the others left. Our team is happy and harmonious. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a faint smile as she turned to look at Di Beichen. That's right. Di Beichen smiled faintly. Without them we can work together. By the way, I have some healing medicine here. Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly stood up. The damage left behind by the skeletons are all attribute damage. Normal healing potions have no effect, but this kind of healing potion is quite effective. Everyone take some with you. If you accidentally get injured, you can treat it in time. She had prepared quite a lot of this kind of medicine at that time. Originally, he thought that he wouldn't need to use it for a while after coming to the upper realm. He didn't expect that it would appear again so soon. With Bailey Hongzhuang's healing medicine in hand, the way everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang gradually changed. Previously, they more or less had some misunderstandings about Bailey Hongzhuang's group, but today, Bailey Hongzhuang's actions gave them a completely different feeling. Junior sister Bailey, thank you. Everyone thanked her. You're welcome. We're all from the same sect. I hope we can all return to the Blazing Flame sect safely. Chapter 4402. Xiao Rojin and her group of 30 people left in a mighty manner. Even in this pitch-black environment, they were not the least bit worried with their large numbers. This Wanyan Han really thinks he's so great just because he's a captain. He wants us to listen to him. The vice-captain of Group 3 said disdainfully. That's right. He doesn't even look at his own status. What ability does he have to order us around? The vice-captain of Group 4 nodded. It's better to leave early. I'm tired of seeing his self-righteous face again. Hearing their words, Xiao Rojin's face rippled with a gentle smile. After all, he's from the lower realm and this is his first time leading a team, so he's a bit paranoid. In fact, with our team's strength, there's no need to fear the skeleton army. Senior Sister Xiao is right. It's more comfortable for us to come out now. Now there are only 20 people left in their team. Speaking of which, Lu Yin doesn't fit in, so he should leave with us. The vice-captain of Group 3 was quite dissatisfied. He wanted to let Wanyan Han's team stay alone. Just thinking about it made Wanyan Han's expression very interesting, but he didn't expect Lu Yin to not leave with them. Lu Yin has always had such a temper. It's not strange for him to do this. Xiao Rojin's expression was calm. This was also within her expectations. Indeed, Lu Yin and Wanyan Han's personalities are somewhat similar. He doesn't have any background, so he's slightly closer to Wanyan Han. We might as well take advantage of the time when those cowards are hiding to check out the depths of the demonic dragon abyss. We'll understand the situation one step ahead of them. We can also go back and claim credit. The vice-captain of Group 4 calculated in his heart. As long as they made a great contribution, Manager Wu would naturally not value Wanyan Han so much. The 30 people walked in the darkness. Xiao Rojin used the power of light to illuminate the way forward, so everyone's speed was not slow. Bailey Hongzhuang, who was preparing to rest, suddenly looked thoughtfully into the distance. Di Beichen saw this and couldn't help but ask, "Wife, what are you looking at?" I sensed the aura of light energy in the distance. It should be Xiao Rojin. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows as a playful smile appeared on her lips. It seems that they really don't care about skeleton. Di Beichen shook his head. I can foresee that something will happen to them tonight. They chose their own path, so let them walk it. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged. They had tried to persuade him, but it was to no avail. If he kept emphasizing it, the other party wouldn't appreciate it. If it was a thankless task, it was fine to try it once, but if he persisted, it would be lowering his status. White Lion and Xiao Bai looked at each other. They understood what their master meant. The skeleton army was very sensitive to the power of light, and because Xiao He was a pure light-type being, she was not used to staying here and had already returned to the Chaos Ring. If Xiao Rojin used the power of light here, wouldn't that be the same as attracting the skeleton army? Is this woman brainless? Baisha was confused. She was the representative of the Blazing Flame sect, but she didn't use her brain at all. Chapter 4403. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others rested where they were. Although they said they were resting, everyone still looked around vigilantly. After Wanyan Han's introduction, everyone had already realized how terrifying the skeleton army was, so no one dared to let their guard down. After all, if such a deep pit suddenly appeared where they were resting, it would be too late for them to do anything. Instead of resting like this, it was better to open their eyes and look around. That way they could feel more at ease. In contrast, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were much calmer. Now that they had obtained the power of darkness, their perception of the aura of darkness had become much more obvious. If the skeleton army appeared, they would definitely be able to sense it. Time gradually passed. Everyone chatted with each other and it passed very quickly. However, this tranquility was broken by a scream. Hearing this scream, everyone couldn't help but look in the direction of the source of the sound. It was the direction where Xiao Rojin and the others had left. Judging from this sound, it's very far away from us. Yi Haomiao stood up and looked into the distance. This sound was obviously a scream made by many people at the same time. However, it was only a faint sound in their ears. It could be seen that the distance was really far. Could it be that something really happened to them? Lu Yan's expression changed slightly. He didn't think that Xiao Rojin and the others would really encounter danger just because they didn't listen to Wang Yanhan's opinion. From this distance and direction, it's very likely that it's them. Wang Yanhan frowned slightly. He didn't expect that something would happen so soon. Whether it's them or not, let's go over and take a look. If there's really danger, we can also help. For a moment, everyone stood up and walked in the direction of the scream. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. They could already confirm that it was Xiao Rojin and the others who were in trouble. However, they were so far away that they probably wouldn't be able to help much when they rushed over. They deserved it, White Lion said coldly. They reaped what they sowed. They were the ones who reaped what they sowed. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and patted Baisher's head. Let's go and take a look. Everyone sped up and hurried forward. However, it was late at night and they could encounter danger at any time. Even if everyone sped up, their speed was not much faster. Everyone was on tenterhooks. Previously, they had already understood the terror of the skeleton army. Now that the other three teams were in trouble, their minds were constantly thinking about what kind of situation they would face if they went there. Wang Yanhan, they should be fine, right? Lu Yan could not help but look at Wang Yanhan, his voice unable to conceal the worry and nervousness. I don't know either. Wang Yanhan shook his head. Their strength is not bad. If they encounter the skeleton army, they should have the ability to escape. However, if the hole happens to appear under their feet, it will be a little troublesome. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other. For some reason, everyone had a feeling that it might be the second possibility. As they hurried along, they realized that the sound was getting closer and closer. It was obvious that the battle was not far from them. The aura of darkness is getting denser and denser, Di Beichen said slowly. Along the way, he realized that the aura of darkness was constantly increasing. It was obviously the skeleton army and nothing else. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. It's good to let them suffer. After this incident, everyone's dissatisfaction with senior brother should lessen a lot. Chapter 4404. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others arrived, they saw an extremely tragic scene. There were hundreds of skeletons in the huge army of skeletons. They were black and majestic, like an army of darkness, making people feel awe. In front of such a huge army, Xiao Rojin's team of 30 people seemed very small. At a glance, not even half of the original 30 people were left. Everyone was desperately running away, and the speed of the skeleton army was equally astonishing. After seeing the appearance of Wang Yanhan and the others, Xiao Rojin hurriedly shouted as if she had seen a life-saving straw, "Help us!" Lu Yan and the others were completely stunned when they saw this scene. Even though Wang Yanhan had told them about the terrifying scene of the skeleton army, it was absolutely incomparable to the shock of seeing it with their own eyes. Oh my god, so scary. How can there be so many skeletons and their combat power is so strong? What Wang Yanhan and the others said before was right. Compared to this skeleton army, we are really small. The three vice-captains, including Xiao Rojin, were pale at the moment. They were originally very proud of going deep, but they didn't expect that a pit would suddenly appear under their feet. Then, some of their teammates were directly killed by the skeleton army. Their reaction speed was also extremely fast, and they had already started to counterattack at the first moment. However, when they saw the number of skeletons increasing, they were completely dumbfounded. Originally, there were only a few dozen skeletons, so they didn't take it to heart. However, when these skeletons increased to 100 or even a few hundred, everyone could only escape. Only those who escaped fast could have a chance to live. Once they were late and the skeleton army caught up, they would only end up losing their lives. It was only now that they realized that what Wang Yanhan had said earlier was not an exaggeration, but the truth. Let's go help them. Wang Yanhan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. The other party was from the same sect, so they couldn't just watch the other party be completely annihilated here. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Everyone do your best and move together. There are too many skeletons. Once they catch up, only death awaits. Everyone should also pay attention to their own safety when saving people, Di Baichen added. Everyone responded and immediately went to help the cultivators who were trying to escape. Di Baichen arrived in front of a cultivator who was being chased. The dark energy in his body quickly surged out. Immediately after, the skeletons that were chasing him paused for a moment. Noticing this, Di Baichen suddenly had an idea. He used the power of darkness to envelop the escaping cultivator. Following this action, the skeletons behind seemed to treat this cultivator as one of their own. Their movements were a little confused, and they turned around to chase after the other cultivators. After the cultivator was freed, he collapsed beside Di Baichen, his eyes filled with gratitude. Di Baichen, thank you for saving my life. Di Baichen waved his hand. It's fine. Go ahead and find a place to rest. I'll go save the others. Thank you. The man thanked him profusely. His gratitude was beyond words. After Di Baichen discovered this method, he began to save people quickly. Every time it was very effective. Chapter 4405. Under such circumstances, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen undoubtedly became the fastest people to save people. With their help, the cultivators escaped one after another. However, everyone had to run forward for a distance before they could escape the pursuit of the skeleton army. It should be safe here. Everyone can rest for a while. Wang Yanhan looked at the skeleton army behind him and couldn't help but say. Hearing Wang Yanhan's words, everyone sat down on the ground in exhaustion, panting heavily. That soul-stirring scene from before had almost scared them out of their wits. Right now they only wanted to have a good rest. Everyone looked at the original team of 50 people, but now there were only 30 people left. They all felt a sense of sorrow in their hearts. Most of the cultivators who died were their close friends. They didn't expect that in such a short time, they would disappear forever from this world. For a moment, many cultivators' eyes were filled with tears. If they were a little slower just now, they might have died as well. Captain, thank you for coming to save us. A cultivator couldn't help but say. If Wang Yanhan and the others hadn't appeared, they might have been completely annihilated. Wang Yanhan waved his hand and said, Since I'm the captain, I naturally should take good care of you. I just didn't expect such a coincidence. We just separated tonight and such a thing happened. It was only the first day in the demonic dragon abyss, and they had lost more than a dozen cultivators. This loss was not small. Hearing Wang Yanhan's words, everyone felt a warmth in their hearts. Previously they ignored Wang Yanhan so much, but he was able to disregard their former enmity and never took it to heart. In comparison, what they did was indeed too inappropriate. When they looked at Xiao Rojin and the others again, everyone's gaze became a little complicated. If they didn't insist on leaving as team members, they could only leave with them. Otherwise they wouldn't have caused such a big loss. Because of the impulsive actions of the 3 vice-captains, half of the cultivators paid with their lives, and they also almost lost their lives. Xiao Rojin and the other two's expressions were extremely ugly. They didn't expect such a situation to happen at all. Recalling the previous scenes, they even felt that they were still in shock. Everything that Wang Yanhan had said before was actually true. When they encountered the skeleton army, they were completely defeated. It was really too terrifying. Junior brother D, junior sister Bailey, thank you for saving me. Forgive me for being prejudiced against the power of darkness, but after this incident, I realized that every power is equal. The power of darkness can also save people. Just now, almost all of us were saved by you. If it weren't for you, we really would have died. At this moment, one of the cultivators stood up and bowed deeply to Bailey Hongzhuang and Yi Zichen. He had no words to thank them for saving his life, so he could only express his gratitude in this way. After the cultivator did so, several figures stood up one after another and bowed to Bailey Hongzhuang. Thank you for saving my life. Everyone, you're too polite. Since we're from the same sect, it's only right that we help each other, Di Baichen said slowly. I apologize for my prejudice against you. Junior brother D, you are an outstanding cultivator. Di Baichen smiled faintly. Thank you. After seeing this scene, Wang Yanhan and the others were also relieved. Di Baichen's dark attribute was really useful in this kind of place. Chapter 4406. Seeing the change in everyone's attitude, Wang Yanhan and the others couldn't help but feel gratified. In their opinion, Di Baichen was a true genius. If he was rejected by everyone because of his darkness attribute, it would be too much of a pity. Fortunately, everyone was discerning. After this incident, they finally saw everything clearly. The expressions of Xiao Rojin and the others were extremely ugly. Originally, their goal was to take advantage of this opportunity to attack Wang Yanhan and the others. They didn't expect that it would be their failure and instead, it would be Wang Yanhan and the others. Now, from everyone's expression, it could be seen that everyone trusted Wang Yanhan and the others from the bottom of their hearts. On the contrary, their trust in them had rapidly decreased. However, no matter how unwilling they were, they couldn't do anything. Being able to keep their lives was already the most fortunate thing for them. We escaped a calamity tonight. Everyone is tired. The sky is gradually brightening. The skeleton army won't appear again. Everyone have a good rest. Wang Yanhan said. Hearing Wang Yanhan's words, everyone was incomparably convinced. Immediately they began to relax and rest. Because, among all of them, only Wang Yanhan and the others understood the skeleton army the best. This can be considered a blessing in disguise. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head and sighed. It's just that the loss is a bit greater. With the arrival of the day, everyone had completely recovered after a few hours of rest. However, what happened last night was still vivid in their minds. Clearly they couldn't forget it for a while. It's daybreak. We can move separately. However, the team may need to be regrouped. Wang Yanhan looked at everyone with a slightly complicated expression. Originally there were 50 people, but now there were only 30 people left. It was really terrible. The eyes of Xiao Rojin and the other two vice-captains also flickered. They were constantly thinking in their hearts. It had to be said that the situation yesterday really scared them out of their wits. So much so that they didn't have the courage to leave alone. Captain, we'll follow you. Yeah, it's too dangerous here. We don't have any experience. If we encounter the situation last night, it's really... Captain, just let us follow you. Don't split into groups. Everyone spoke one after another. Their voices were filled with pleading. Now, they only believed in Wang Yanhan and the others. Only in this way could they feel safe. Wang Yanhan obviously didn't expect that everyone would have such a request. He couldn't help but be stunned. So many of us are moving together? Actually, it's not a big deal. Although it will be slower, at least it's safer, Xiao Rojin said slowly. At this moment she no longer cared so much. If it weren't for the fact that she still wanted to save some face, she would have immediately returned to the Blazing Flames sect. It was not worth it to train in a place where she could lose her life at any time. With her status, she only needed to stay in the Raging Flames sect. Noticing the change in Xiao Rojin's attitude, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but look at each other with interest in their eyes. However, with so many of us moving together, it's very likely that we won't be able to compare to the Azure Dragon Gate. Wang Yanhan frowned. How about this? Let's split into two groups. On one hand it's safer. On the other hand we can speed things up a little, Lu Yen said. Chapter 4407. After some discussion, it was finally decided that Wang Yanhan and Lu Yen would lead the team and split into two teams. Although Xiao Rojin and the two vice-captains still wanted to lead the team, it was a pity that no one wanted to pay attention to them and did not mention them at all. When they saw this scene, they tactfully stopped mentioning this matter to avoid embarrassing themselves. After splitting into two teams, Xiao Rojin and the other three vice-captains naturally became ordinary team members. Unfortunately, they all followed Wang Yanhan's team. In any case, they were vice-captains. It was not a big deal to follow the captain, but if they followed Lu Yen it would be really embarrassing. Everyone went all the way inside. What they needed to know now was not only what was in the demonic dragon abyss, but also how big it was. Wife, has the feeling of being followed disappeared? Di Baichen asked. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly. No, it's still there. Di Baichen's eyes darkened. We have been away for so long, but they are still following us. It seems that the other party's background is not simple. But why is the other party following us? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows wrinkled. This was what she couldn't understand the most. Although they had made a lot of noise after coming to Rong'an City, they had not provoked many people. It was a little strange that the other party had followed them all the way to the depths of the demonic dragon abyss. Is it the Di family? Di Baichen pondered. It could be them, but would they follow us so far? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her slender eyebrows. She always felt that with the Di family's temperament, they would have jumped out long ago. Besides them, there is only one possibility left. Di Baichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's bright eyes. Gong Qianfeng's revenge. That is indeed possible. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression changed slightly. They had embarrassed Gong Tianfeng in front of the president. She would definitely be very unhappy, so it was possible that she would send people to take revenge. We have to be careful. Since we already know of their existence, we should be prepared to deal with them at any time. Yes. During the day, everyone's speed could be said to be extremely fast. Because they knew that skeletons would not appear during the day, everyone was very relieved. It was only in the evening that the group slowed down. Let's find a suitable place to rest nearby, Wang Yanhan said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Okay. Due to the fact that the other cultivators didn't know much about the training grounds and didn't know what kind of place was the safest, it was those who were more knowledgeable who scattered around to search. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen led some of the cultivators in a direction to find a suitable place. Everyone agreed to meet up later. Xiao Rojin seemed to be competing with Bailey Hongzhuang, so she decided to follow Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang could not be bothered with this. She had never regarded Xiao Rojin as her opponent, but the other party liked to compete with her, so there was nothing she could do. It's so dark here we can't see the surroundings at all. Junior sister Bailey, you still don't know much about the use of light power. Why don't I teach you how to use light power to illuminate? Chapter 4408. Ever since she came to the demonic dragon abyss, she had lost face in front of Bailey Hongzhuang several times. Now that she had a chance, she naturally wanted to save some face. However, just as Xiao Rojin was about to use her light power, Bailey Hongzhuang snapped, "Stop!" Xiao Rojin couldn't help but be startled by Bailey Hongzhuang's sudden shout. She stopped what she was doing and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with displeasure. "What are you doing? Senior sister Xiao, don't you know that the light power will attract the skeleton army? There are dark elements everywhere here, and the most repulsive element is the light element. If you use the light power here, it will undoubtedly be a bright light in the dark night, making those skeletons target us." The light and pleasant voice was cold, and Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful eyes were still fierce. If Xiao Rojin was courting death, she would be too lazy to pay attention to it, but if it affected their safety, she could no longer turn a blind eye to it. Xiao Rojin, who was about to make trouble, was also stunned at this moment. She had a startled look on her face, obviously not expecting such a situation. Isn't the light power the nemesis of the dark power? They should be afraid of the light power. Xiao Rojin retorted, but her voice was somewhat powerless. The light power is indeed the nemesis of the dark power, but only when the light power is strong enough. If an army of light attributes appears, the skeleton army may leave, but your scattered light power will only attract them to destroy you. Senior sister Xiao, you should understand this principle, right? After Bailey Hongzhuang faintly dropped a sentence, she looked into the distance, looking for a place to rest tonight. Xiao Rojin looked embarrassed. She opened her mouth but closed it in the end. Because what Bailey Hongzhuang said was really reasonable and no one could refute it. The other cultivators couldn't help but look at Xiao Rojin. Bailey Hongzhuang's words reminded them that Xiao Rojin used the light power to illuminate the area yesterday. In that case, it was very likely that the skeleton army that attacked them yesterday was provoked by Xiao Rojin. Xiao Rojin didn't think of this at first, but when she noticed the change in everyone's expressions, she finally thought of it. Her face immediately turned pale, and her aura instantly dissipated into nothingness. She just walked with her head lowered, not daring to meet everyone's eyes. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Lin Mingyao were searching, several figures suddenly appeared before them. Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichen, I'd like to see who can protect you today. De Vo's figure suddenly appeared. At this moment he had a complacent look on his face. In order to confirm whether Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were accompanied by a mentor, they had spent a lot of effort. In the end they had found the best opportunity. Looking at the group of people who appeared in front of them, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. They didn't expect that they were really from the Di family. However, for some reason, after knowing that they were cultivators from the Di family, they actually heaved a sigh of relief. At least, the people from the Di family should be easier to deal with than the people sent by Gong Tianfeng. The other cultivators couldn't help but be dumbfounded when they saw the sudden appearance of the Di family. No one expected that someone would appear halfway. This is a personal grudge between us and Bailey Hongzhuang. It has nothing to do with you. You can leave. Chapter 4409. After all, if they killed the other cultivators from the Blazing Flame sect, they would be disrespecting the Blazing Flame sect. They did not want to offend the Blazing Flame sect completely because of this. As Di Sudong finished speaking, the cultivators could not help but look at each other. This situation was indeed very awkward for them. They did not want to lose their lives because of this, but if they left Bailey Hongzhuang and White Tiger here because of this, they would be too disloyal. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang also said, "You guys should leave. This is a grudge between the four of us. We will settle it ourselves. But they have the advantage in numbers and there are only two of you. This is too dangerous." A cultivator frowned. Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang had saved him yesterday. If he left just like this, he would not know how to repay their kindness. Di Beichen waved his hand. "It's okay. You can go back and help us inform Wanyan Han and the rest." Neither he nor Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to implicate them. There were 6 cultivators from the Di family in front of them, and they were all very powerful. However, Hongzhuang, Xiaohei and White Lion were not weak either. Although they could not guarantee that they would defeat them, they would at least be able to deal with them for a while. Moreover, if worst came to worst, it would be like last time. As long as they suppressed one of them, the situation would be reversed. Just as the cultivators were puzzled, Xiao Rojin said, "Since this is a personal grudge between them, it is not appropriate for us to interfere. Let's go back first." With that, Xiao Rojin turned and left first. Seeing this, the other cultivators hesitated and finally chose to leave as well. After all, no one wanted to get involved in this mess. "Master, these guys are too disloyal." White Lion's eyes were filled with disgust. They had helped these people before, but they had actually done this. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was indifferent. True friends can only be encountered by chance, not sought after. To have a few such friends is something to be happy about. As for the others, there is no need to force them. After everyone left, the smiles on the faces of Devouz and the others grew even brighter. "I thought you guys would stay in the blazing sect forever. You're finally out." Time and time again they had suffered losses in the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. They had almost begun to doubt their lives, but at this moment, they finally had a chance to fight them head-on. Needless to say, this was a crushing situation. At the thought of this, Devouz was a little excited. "Looks like you didn't suffer enough from us last time. This time it won't be as easy as last time." Di Beichen's voice was slightly cold. This group of people was always looking for trouble. It was time to put an end to it. As soon as he said that, Devouz's face darkened. It would have been fine if Di Beichen hadn't mentioned the previous incident. Now that he mentioned it, it immediately reminded him of the embarrassing scene. "Last time we were ambushed by you. This time we will send you directly to the underground to be buried with Wen Tao." Devouz finally couldn't hold back. With a move, he directly attacked Bailey Hongzhuang. After the last fight, he already understood that he was no match for Di Beichen. So this time he wouldn't send himself to his doorstep. When Devouz made his move, Di Sudong and the others immediately began to move as well. Now that there were 6 of them, it was undoubtedly the easiest way to deal with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Bang! Chapter 44:10. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen unleashed their full strength. Even if they were facing cultivators stronger than them, they were not afraid at all. Bang! Bailey Hongzhuang and Devouz clashed head-on. The power of light was unleashed without any concealment. If it was a normal day, she would naturally not use it. However, it was not a bad idea to attract the skeleton army over. After all, they could completely cover themselves with the aura of darkness. The skeleton army would not attack them. On the contrary, Devouz and the rest would not be so lucky. Blood aura field. Bailey Hongzhuang coldly shouted in her heart. A dense blood aura suddenly erupted. Her dark pupils were dyed with a blood-red color. The surrounding aura also became cold and murderous. Noticing the change in Bailey Hongzhuang, Devouz could not help but be stunned. For a moment he did not know what Bailey Hongzhuang was doing. However, when he noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang's aura had actually started to rapidly rise, his expression changed. Star Radiance Level 5. Star Radiance Level 6. She who was originally Star Radiance Level 4 had actually forcefully raised her aura to Star Radiance Level 6. From that pure aura, one could tell that she had really raised her aura and was not putting on an act. How could this be? Devouz was dumbfounded. There was actually someone who could forcefully raise their cultivation like this. This was too heaven-defying. However, it was only Star Radiance Level 6. It was not much of a threat to him. Even if you used all your strength, you would only be able to raise your cultivation to Star Radiance Level 6. You are still not my opponent. Devouz's face rippled with a cold smile. He was Star Radiance Level 8. How could Bailey Hongzhuang compete with him? Don't worry, I will definitely let you die an incomparably painful death later. Devout's gaze was sinister. Towards Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, he had already tormented them countless times in his imagination. Right now he was just starting to implement it. I'm afraid it's not as easy as you think. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were cold, and her murderous aura spread out. The dense murderous aura mixed with the astonishing blood qi, causing people to shudder. Devout's only felt an inexplicable fear in the bottom of his heart. He faintly felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was invincible. Under the influence of this state of mind, Devout's discovered that he was unable to fully display his star radiance level 8 strength. He tried to exert his full strength, but he couldn't do it. Bailey Hongzhuang's murderous eyes kept circling in his mind, making him uneasy. If Bailey Hongzhuang was not Devout's opponent in the past, her strength had undoubtedly increased by a few notches after her yuan qi had been converted into the power of light. Coupled with her killing aura and blood aura, she was not at a disadvantage at all. How could this be? Devout's expression was extremely ugly. In the past he didn't really fight with Bailey Hongzhuang. He always felt that defeating Bailey Hongzhuang should be a very simple matter. However, the current scene was completely beyond his imagination. At this moment he finally understood why Di Wentao was defeated by Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest. Pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest's fighting strength could not be judged based on their cultivation. If they were to be so sure once they fought, they would definitely be at a disadvantage. Chapter 44:11. Di Sudong could not do anything to Di Beichen at the moment. He finally understood why Wu Wenfeng thought so highly of these fellows. Even though he was unwilling to admit it, he understood that once these young people developed in the future, they would not be simple characters. Di Sudong's gaze grew increasingly sinister at the thought of this. It was precisely because of this that he had to get rid of all these people. Otherwise, these people would bring great trouble to the Di family in the future. Someone help me. Devout's hurriedly shouted. At a time like this, he did not care about his reputation. All he wanted was to kill Bailey Hongzhuang. Bai Shi and Bailey Hongzhuang faced off against 3 people, including Devout's, while Di Beichen faced off against 3 people. It goes without saying that their opponents were not weak at all. It was not an easy task for them to deal with them. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. Their thoughts were simple. If they could win, they would fight. If they could not win, they would run. They would grind their opponents to death. Within the range of the blood and murderous aura, their opponents' cultivation levels were suppressed. Hence, Bai Shi and Xiao Bai's opponents had undoubtedly been weakened. Bailey Hongzhuang held the colored glass sword in her hand. Her beautiful face was murderous and emotionless. Her movement technique was ethereal and strange. She only needed to find an opening to deliver a fatal blow. Both parties' martial techniques collided loudly. The dazzling colors illuminated the darkness like brilliant fireworks. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen worked together seamlessly. Even when faced with 6 people's attacks, they were still able to take care of each other. Di Sudong and the others' expressions turned ugly. They had thought that this would be a one-sided situation. They never thought that it would be so troublesome to kill the 2 of them. If this continues, once reinforcements arrive, it would be difficult for them to attack. However, just as they were exchanging blows, a group of black-clothed men suddenly appeared and surrounded all of them. Upon seeing the sudden appearance of another group of people, Bailey Hongzhuang and the Di family cultivators could not help but stop what they were doing and look at each other in surprise. They did not understand who had suddenly appeared. The cultivators who appeared were all dressed in black with black veils covering their faces. It was impossible to see their faces clearly. That black figure was hidden in this training ground, and there was no way to discover it. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the cultivators who suddenly appeared in front of her. This group of people seemed to be well trained. Previously, when they were fighting, they did not notice that there were other cultivators around them. She did not know why, but she vaguely felt that the stalker she had sensed earlier might not have been the Di family's cultivators, but this group of men in black. Who are you? Devout's clearly did not expect that a group of people would suddenly appear under such circumstances. Furthermore, based on the other party's posture, they seemed to be well trained and had an extraordinary background. However, that group of people completely ignored Devout's and only looked at their leader. Leader, what should we do? Kill them all. The leader's eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. They were cold and emotionless. He looked at the group of people in front of him as if they were cats and dogs. He did not have the slightest bit of sympathy. As the man finished speaking, the other men in black nodded one after another. They immediately took out their weapons and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Chapter 44:12. Who do you think you are? How dare you threaten to kill all of us? Aren't you too arrogant? A cultivator from the D family stepped forward with a mocking smile on his face. The other party did not even know who they were, yet they dared to speak so arrogantly. Besides him, D Sudong and the others also had a mocking look on their faces. The other party did not have more people than them. They were merely 4 people, yet they dared to speak so arrogantly in front of them. It was simply ridiculous. However, what happened next made them unable to laugh anymore. The other party's figure flashed and the head of the D family cultivator who had spoken fell to the ground. It rolled a few times before it finally stopped at Devao's feet. Devao felt as if his throat was being choked by a pair of invisible hands. He could not utter a single word. The other party's speed was as fast as lightning. The D family cultivators did not even have time to react before the other party's attack ended. The most terrifying thing was that there was no sign of struggle or pain from the beginning to the end. Only his widened eyes showed his disbelief. At that moment, they finally understood that the 4 people in front of them were not ordinary people. Such a method could be considered terrifying. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen exchanged glances. In their hearts, they already knew that these people were professional assassins. Apart from professionally trained assassins, no one else could have such nimble methods and swift speed. Their actions were silent. If it had been a sneak attack, they might not even have known how they died. The other party had stepped forward openly because they did not care about them at all. In their hearts, they did not deserve to be their opponents. Almost immediately, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen fled without hesitation. They were no match for this group of people. If they stayed, only death would await them. Devao's and the others' reactions were no different from Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's. A true expert could be judged by the way they attacked. However, their speed was slightly slower than Bailey Hongzhuang's. Everyone split into 2 groups and fled in different directions. The 4 cultivators also split into 2 groups. Since they had already made their move, they could not leave any traces behind. Moreover, such an opponent was not a problem for them at all. Even if the other party was given time to escape, he would not be able to escape from their clutches. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen fled as fast as they could. Behind them, blood-curdling screams could be heard. It was obvious that the cultivators of the D family had died at their hands. For the first time, Bailey Hongzhuang felt like she was on the run. There was a kind of panic in her heart, and all of her cells seemed to be activated at this moment. She could even hear the sound of her own heartbeat. She had no doubt that as long as she was slightly slower, the other party would directly chop off her head. In the process of escaping, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen tacitly avoided Wanyan Han and the others. They were no match for this group of people at all. No matter how many people came, they were nothing more than cannon fodder. In such a tense moment, they did not even have the time to think about who the other party was and why they had immediately threatened to kill them. They did not even know who the other party was after. With a stomp, the other party's figure rushed directly in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 44:13. Cold. An extreme coldness spread throughout Bailey Hongzhuang's body. It was a coldness that came from the bottom of her heart. The other party's sharp eyes were merciless and murderous, as if she was only his prey. The other party's lips curled into a sinister sneer, and the sharp blade in his hand attacked her without hesitation. Ding! Di Beichen's flowing light sword blocked it. "Wife, be careful." His warm and mellow voice was filled with concern, and he did not even have the time to say anything before he exchanged blows with the other party. Bailey Hongzhuang's reaction speed was extremely fast, and she immediately rushed forward. Even though they knew that they were no match for them, they still wanted to fight to the death. Faced with Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's counterattack, the other party looked relaxed and at ease. Their eyes even carried a hint of playfulness, as if they were looking at 2 pets on the verge of death, and it was interesting to see their final struggle. The other party's abilities were definitely not at the Starlight realm. Even if they used all their skills, they were still no match for them. In a short period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang's body was covered with wounds. That kind of pain was nothing in the face of death. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's desperate counterattack was unfortunately unable to injure the other party. It was a kind of indescribable despair. "Wife." Just as the other party's sharp sword was about to pierce Bailey Hongzhuang's body, Di Beichen's figure flashed and blocked in front of her, pulling her into his arms. Di Beichen's actions were instinctive, without the slightest bit of hesitation. As long as he was still alive, he would protect Bailey Hongzhuang with his life. Blood. Bright red and warm blood splashed onto her face, and the fishy sweet smell stimulated her soul. She did not know who the other party was, nor did she know why they wanted to kill them. They had experienced a lot of pain in the past, but they had never experienced such despair. However, looking at Di Baichen beside her who was risking his life to protect her, the blood in her body seemed to ignite in an instant. The scorching heat almost burned her to ashes. Thinking that Di Baichen might leave her life because of this, or that they might be buried underground forever, or that they might never see their loved ones again, her eyes flashed with an indescribable madness. Ah! With a hysterical cry, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly felt that the question in her mind that she had been unable to figure out all this time was suddenly solved. Devil's Gate. Bailey Hongzhuang's scarlet eyes were filled with madness and cruelty. The power within her body exploded wildly and a gigantic beast suddenly appeared in front of her, blocking her opponent's attack. It was a huge centipede. Its scarlet body reflected a cold light, and its hard and tough shell seemed indestructible. As soon as the crimson centipede appeared, it stared at the two cultivators in front of it as if they were delicious food. The other party was obviously shocked by this sudden scene. They simply couldn't understand how such a giant beast could appear out of nowhere. What's going on? The two assassins were completely dumbfounded. They had lived for so long and had never encountered such a situation before. This fellow can't be this woman's contracted beast, right? The other assassin was puzzled. He had seen Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly shout and this gigantic fellow had appeared out of thin air. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would have thought that he was dreaming. Chapter 44:14. The two men looked at each other. Based on their powers, it should be a piece of cake for them to finish off Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao Bei. After all, the higher-ups had sent them here to ensure that nothing goes wrong. Otherwise, they would not have needed to deal with cultivators of this level. Previously, when they had received this mission, they had felt that it was unnecessary to use a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. However, the higher-ups had placed great importance on this mission, so they had no choice but to come personally. However, after witnessing this scene, they finally understood that the other party was no simple character. She had actually summoned such a large creature out of thin air. It was no wonder that the higher-ups had sent them here to deal with it. They had never seen such an ability before. Di Baichen, Bai Shi, and Xiao Bai stared at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment. They could not understand how Bailey Hongzhuang had managed to summon such a large creature. In fact, Bailey Hongzhuang herself was in disbelief as she stared at the large creature before her. Kill them. Bailey Hongzhuang ordered. As Bailey Hongzhuang spoke, the blood-red centipede began to attack the assassins. Its enormous strength forced the two assassins to retreat. This large creature with thick skin and flesh could not be defeated in a short period of time. However, Bailey Hongzhuang only glared at them. She wanted to remember their faces. She would definitely have her revenge for what had happened today. The large creature's appearance stopped the assassins in their tracks. Bailey Hongzhuang supported Di Baichen and quickly left. They did not know how long the large creature could hold them off. They could only try their best to find a place to hide. However, just as they were about to escape, the two cultivators who had been heading in another direction rushed over. Master, what should we do? Bai Shi and Xiao Bai's bodies were covered in wounds. They had finally found a chance to escape, but they never thought that they would be targeted by the other two. Despair spread once again. Leader, kill them. Don't let them get away. The two cultivators who were being forced back by the giant beast could only shout from the side. They didn't expect the giant beast to be so strong. They could only be chased by the giant beast and couldn't kill it in a short time. However, they could not allow Bailey Hongzhuang and Gu Ruoyun to leave this place alive. Otherwise, they would be severely punished when they return. Wife, let go of me. Di Baichen spoke slowly, but his attitude was unusually firm. If he continued to be with Bailey Hongzhuang, he would only be a burden to her. If he stayed, at least he could buy some time. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang could live, it was enough for him. However, Bailey Hongzhuang completely ignored him. In the next moment, Di Baichen was sucked into Bailey Hongzhuang's chaos ring. The four assassins stared at Di Baichen, who had suddenly disappeared. They were dumbfounded. Bailey Hongzhuang had first pulled this big fellow out of thin air. Now she had made Di Baichen disappear out of thin air. Was she performing a magic trick? They looked around, but there was no sign of Di Baichen. Bai Shi, Xiao Bai, you two go in as well. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was solemn. Her eyes were so cold that there was no warmth in them. This was the only thing she could do now. Master, we're not going in. Master, you and I are one. If you die, I won't be able to live either. Let's fight to the death. Bai Shi's eyes were cold and fierce. There was no fear in them. Chapter 44:15. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes reddened. An indescribable complex emotion rippled in her heart. No matter when or where, they would always be by her side. Even if they had to die. In the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze turned sharp again. Good. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's performance, the four people's gazes changed gradually. Cultivators in the Starlight Realm were like ants to them. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's performance made them look at them in a new light. With their cultivation base, it was already very scary to be able to achieve this. Di Sudong and the others from before had a higher cultivation base than them, but they could not hold on for so long. They did not doubt that if these two cultivators were allowed to continue developing, they would definitely become terrifying existences in the future. Who are you people? Bailey Hongzhuang looked sharply at the four people in front of her. These four people had appeared out of nowhere, and their strength had completely exceeded their level. She was certain that they had never offended cultivators of this level. In fact, they did not have the qualifications to come into contact with people of this level in the upper realm. Naturally, they could not afford to offend them. However, the other party did not answer. Now that things have come to this, I can no longer escape. Why don't you let me die knowing? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. The outcome was already predictable. She was fighting with her back against the wall. However, even if she died, she should at least know who killed her. We can't tell you. The man in the lead had a cold gaze and an indifferent expression on his face. Other than a flash of surprise, his eyes were cold and inhuman from the beginning to the end. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart sank. It seemed that the people behind them were very careful. Even at this point, they were not willing to reveal their identity. They really could not be underestimated. Do it. The leader looked at the cultivators beside him. One person was enough to deal with Bailey Hongzhuang. Although they could not deal with this giant centipede in a short period of time, it would be enough if one of them could kill Bailey Hongzhuang. The assassin immediately attacked Bailey Hongzhuang. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze was cold and murderous. At this moment, her body was covered in wounds. Even if she ran, she could not outrun her opponent. She might as well fight to the death. Ding. Both weapons clashed. The opponent's terrifying strength caused Bailey Hongzhuang's hand to go numb. Blood faintly, but she still held her sword tightly. Whoosh. All the power in her body erupted at this moment. It was as if everything around her had disappeared, and the only thing in her eyes was the assassin before her. The other party's methods were astonishingly sharp. There was no hesitation at all. The sword in his hand landed everywhere, aiming for vital points. Under such circumstances, it was extremely difficult for Bailey Hongzhuang to persist for even a moment. Whoosh, whoosh. Bailey Hongzhuang stumbled back several steps. Her clothes had long been stained red with blood. She looked disheveled and miserable. However, her eyes were as sharp as a wolf's. They were tragic and persistent. Faced with Bailey Hongzhuang in this state, the assassin's heart was shaken. The opponent was clearly no match for him. Yet, she had been able to hold on for so long. This was already a miracle. Slash. The sharp blade pierced Bailey Hongzhuang's body, drawing a red line of blood. Master. Chapter 44:16. White Lion. Fresh blood blurred Bailey Hongzhuang's vision. She could no longer tell if it was blood or tears that had blurred her vision. His heart ached to the extreme at this moment, and he felt as if he couldn't even breathe. The opponent was too terrifying and cold-blooded, causing one to break down from the bottom of their heart. The white lion fell in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Its eyes were fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang. Even at its last moment, it still wanted to imprint its master's face deeply into its heart. Die. The man's eyes were cold and sharp. He stabbed the sharp blade in his hand without hesitation. However, at that moment, Bailey Hongzhuang felt the dark aura beneath her feet suddenly become denser. A ray of light flashed across her eyes, which were filled with despair and agony. She used all her strength to run wildly backward. The opponent clearly did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang to still want to escape at this point in time. However, given her current state, how could she escape? It's useless. The man shook his head. This kind of resistance was a joke to him. However, just as the man was about to chase after Bailey Hongzhuang, the ground beneath his feet suddenly sank. A huge force grabbed his leg and mercilessly tore it off. Ah! The man let out an earth-shattering, blood-curdling scream. He never expected that a pit would suddenly appear beneath his feet. A numbing number of skeletons quietly appeared from the pit and tore the man's body into pieces before he could defend himself. In a short while the man had disappeared without a trace. The other 3 assassins couldn't help but be stunned when they saw this scene. This sudden turn of events was completely beyond their expectations. Even though they had lost one person, Bailey Hongzhuang must have lost her life since she had entered the sea of skeletons. However, they did not notice that a pair of blood-red eerie eyes were staring fixedly at them from within the sea of skeletons. She would definitely avenge today's grudge. When Wang Yanhan and Yi Haomiao found out that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Jiao had been besieged by the Di family's cultivators, their expressions changed abruptly. There are so many people in the Di family. How could you leave the 2 of them there? After being reprimanded by Wang Yanhan, everyone's gazes immediately turned to Xiao Rojin. It was Xiao Rojin who had suggested coming back. Noticing the change in everyone's expression, Wang Yanhan and Yi Haomiao couldn't help but look at Xiao Rojin with sharp gazes. This is a personal grudge between them. Why should we get involved? Xiao Rojin spread out her hands and asked innocently. Obviously, she did not feel that there was anything wrong with her approach. Hearing this, Wang Yanhan looked at Xiao Rojin in disgust. He knew very well that this woman must be eager for something to happen to little junior sister and the others. Let's go take a look. Right now, he didn't have time to settle this score with Xiao Rojin. He had to hurry over. He only hoped that junior brother Di and little junior sister could hold on until they arrived. After Wang Yanhan and Yi Haomiao set off, Lu Yin also rushed over with people. Even though he had not interacted with Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Jiao for a long time, they were already friends. Furthermore, they were from the same sect. How could they watch outsiders bully their fellow disciples? However, when Wang Yanhan and the others arrived, they did not see Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Jiao. Chapter 44:17. At the thought of this possibility, Wang Yanhan could not help but clench his fists tightly under his sleeves. No way. He did not believe that junior brother Di and little junior sister would die in the hands of the Di family. Guilt, regret, self-blame, Wang Yanhan's heart was filled with all sorts of emotions. In fact, he was the one who had killed Di Wentao. If it had not been for him, little junior sister and the rest would not have had any interaction with the Di family. If they had died in the hands of the Di family, he would never forgive himself. Yi Haomiao's face was also filled with anxiety. According to what they said, this should be the place. Why are there no traces? Wang Yanhan, come over and take a look. At that moment, LV Yan's voice was heard from a short distance away. Wang Yanhan and Yi Haomiao immediately rushed over to where LV Yan was. However, their expressions changed when they saw the corpse on the ground. I remember this face. He is a cultivator from the Di family. Yi Haomiao said hurriedly. LV Yan and the rest could not help but look at each other. Since a cultivator from the Di family has died, this proves that things are not as bad as we thought. Let's go and take a look nearby. Okay. Everyone spread out and searched the surroundings. However, what happened next left them dumbfounded. We found the corpse of a cultivator from the Di family here. We found Devao's corpse here. We found Di Sudong's corpse here. In a short time, a group of people found the 6 corpses of the Di family not far away from this place. There were only 6 cultivators from the Di family that we saw previously. Now they are all dead. The cultivator who had gone back to inform Wang Yanhan had a complicated expression on his face. Could Di Baichen and the rest have killed all the cultivators from the Di family? If that was the case, the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen was too terrifying. The Di family had not wanted to kill them. They were the ones who had exterminated the Di family. No way. Wang Yanhan shook his head with a solemn expression. If little junior sister and the others killed them, they should have returned by now. It's impossible for there to be no news at all. Lu Yin nodded his head solemnly. Indeed. Based on the distribution of the Di family's cultivators' corpses, it is obvious that they fled in 2 different directions. However, they were caught up and killed. There are only 2 of them, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen. It's impossible for them to do this. Wang Yanhan, look, there's blood here. Yi Haomiao's voice suddenly sounded. Looking at the blood trail on the ground, his heart gradually sank. Wang Yanhan and the others quickly rushed over. As expected, these bloodstains were left behind when they were fleeing. Look, there are footprints on the bloodstains. Everyone took a closer look, and it was indeed as he said. It seems that there should be a 3rd group of people here. These bloodstains could only belong to little junior sister and her group. Wang Yanhan's expression was complicated. He couldn't understand why they would encounter another group of people here. Let's search nearby again. They might not have gone far, Yi Haomiao said. Based on the situation of the bloodstains, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Sudong's situation was definitely not good. They had to speed up. Let's search in the direction of the bloodstains, Lu Yen said in a low voice. Chapter 44:18. However, as the group continued to move forward, they realized that there was an army of skeletons in the distance. The black mass of skeletons emitted a heart-palpitating fluctuation. Ever since they had encountered the army of skeletons, everyone had a lingering fear. Now that they had seen it again, almost everyone wanted to run away. Just as they were hesitating, they suddenly saw two black figures sweep past them. The other party's speed was extremely fast, but they were certain that the two figures they had seen were not fake. Who are these two people? Could Beichen's accident be related to the two of them? Yi Haomiao looked in the direction in which the two had left. The two of them had suddenly appeared here and were dressed in black. Even their faces were covered. It was obvious that they were going to do something shameful. Wan Yinhan also looked at the two of them. Although he did not have any evidence, he was almost certain that the two of them had done it. However, by the time they wanted to chase after them, the two of them had already disappeared without a trace. They're so fast. They're definitely very powerful. Yi Haomiao stared in horror at the backs of the two men in black. In the blink of an eye, their figures had disappeared from sight. This speed was simply shocking. That means that little junior sister and the others should be in the army of skeletons. Wan Yinhan turned around and looked at the army of skeletons. Based on the way the two men in black had fled, he could see that they were in a sorry state. It must have been because of the army of skeletons. Thinking about it, this was the only possibility that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were in the army of skeletons. Little junior sister. Wan Yinhan immediately called out loudly at the thought of this. Di Beichen. Bailey Hongzhuang. Everyone called out to her, but unfortunately, there was no response. Seeing this, everyone looked at each other. Although no one said anything, they knew very well that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' chances of survival were very small. First, they had been pursued and seriously injured. Now they had fallen into the army of skeletons. It was simply impossible for them to survive. I'll go in and look for them. Wan Yinhan refused to believe it. They had clearly been fine together. They had only been separated for a moment and the two of them had fallen. How could anyone accept this? Seeing Wan Yinhan's action, Lu Yen and Yi Haomiao hurriedly stopped him. Are you crazy? With so many skeletons, let alone you, even if all of us went there, we would still die. If they're alive, I want to see them. If they're dead, I want to see their corpses. If I don't find them, I definitely won't give up. Wan Yinhan's expression was resolute. He absolutely couldn't accept such an outcome. Wan Yinhan, calm down. Yi Haomiao shouted. If they were really surrounded by the army of skeletons, nothing would be left. Have you forgotten what happened last night? Wan Yinhan was stunned when he heard these words. Indeed, with the terrifying strength of the skeleton army, he would be torn to pieces in a short period of time once he was surrounded. They died because of me. Wan Yinhan stared at Yi Haomiao, his voice filled with hysteria. Little junior sister and little junior sister had gotten into such trouble because of him. Now that he was alive and well, but little junior sister and little junior sister had fallen, how was he going to face them? Chapter 44:19. A heart-wrenching pain. She felt as if her entire body had been crushed by a giant beast. There was not a single part of her body that did not hurt. A burning sensation spread throughout her body as if someone was calling out to her. However, no matter how hard she tried, she could not open her eyes. Master. Master, wake up. Bailey Hongzhuang's body was shaken. She used all her strength to open her eyes. Xiaohei was calling out to her anxiously. When she saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had opened her eyes, Xiaohei's teary eyes lit up with joy. Master, how are you? Nothing must happen to you. Bailey Hongzhuang's mind went blank for a moment as she stared at Xiaohei. Then her memories quickly returned. Assassin, pursuit, a fight to the death. Scene after scene flashed across her mind. In the end, she stopped at the scene of Di Beichen and Bai Shi who had been stabbed. Her expression changed and she immediately tried to sit up. However, the moment she moved, the heart-wrenching pain caused her to frown. Her body felt as if it had been filled with lead. It was extremely difficult for her to move. Even though her body was in great pain, she insisted on sitting up. She then turned to look at Di Beichen and Bai Shi. They were lying there without any reaction. Di Beichen. Why sure. Bailey Hongzhuang called out to them. However, they still did not move. It was as if they could not hear Bailey Hongzhuang's voice at all. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart trembled when she saw this. Her bright eyes revealed a trace of fear. She clearly remembered that Di Beichen and Bai Shi had taken a blow for her. She was afraid that they would leave her just like that. Master, they're not dead yet. Xiao Hei's eyes were filled with tears. It did not know why they would encounter such a calamity out of the blue. Almost everyone was on the verge of death. After listening to Xiao Hei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart calmed down a little, but she was still worried. She knew very well how serious her injuries were at that time. If she didn't receive treatment in time, it was hard to say whether she could survive. She wanted to stand up, but she had no strength. Therefore, she could only use all her strength to crawl to Di Beichen and White Lion's side. She placed her hand on Di Beichen's pulse. That weak pulse had almost disappeared, but the faint fluctuations made her understand that Di Beichen was still alive. However, judging from his pulse, his injuries were far more serious than he had imagined. She quickly took out a medicinal pill from her bosom and fed it to Di Beichen before looking at Bai Shi at the side. The white lion's fur was now dyed red with blood, and it no longer had its majestic appearance. There was a huge hole in its stomach, and blood was flowing uncontrollably from the wound. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly took out some medicine and sprinkled it on Bai Shi's wound, then began to bandage it. However, the blood was flowing too quickly. She could not stop it even when she tried to cover it with her hands. Her hands were covered in blood. Bailey Hongzhuang's vision was blurry. She was on the verge of breaking down and she wanted to cry out loud. However, she managed to calm down in the end. She understood that she could not break down now. She had to think of a way to save them. Because if they were no longer around, she would not be able to live either. Master, don't cry. Let me help you. Xiao Hei's lips trembled. Everywhere they looked was a shocking bloodstain. They had never been in such a tragic state before. No matter what, as long as there was still a glimmer of hope, they could not let anything happen to Di Beichen and White Lion. All right. Chapter 44-20. Lower Realm Lan Family. Mu Lingbing's heart clenched in pain, and she couldn't help feeling nervous and uncomfortable. Yunxiao, I don't know why, but I'm suddenly very worried. Did something happen to Hongzhuang and the rest? Mu Lingbing hurriedly went to find Lan Yunxiao. She hadn't felt this way in a long time. She had felt this way when Bailey Hongzhuang was in trouble. She didn't expect to feel this way again today. It truly made her feel uneasy. Lan Yunxiao's expression changed slightly at Mu Lingbing's words. He pondered for a moment before saying, "It can't be. I received a letter from Xiren saying that they went to the upper realm. Moreover, Beichen's father is already looking for them. Logically speaking, they should be in the D family by now. There shouldn't be any problems. Could it be that the D family doesn't accept Hongzhuang?" Mu Lingbing looked anxious. She had never thought that there would be such a problem before she knew about the upper realm. However, she couldn't help but worry after learning that Di Beichen was the young master of an aristocratic family in the upper realm. After all, not all families didn't care about status. It can't be. Lan Yunxiao shook his head. You've seen Beichen's father. He's not that kind of person. Seeing Lan Yunxiao's confident expression, Mu Lingbing relaxed a little. However, she still couldn't help but pace back and forth. I keep feeling that something has happened. We should go to the upper realm as soon as possible. Hongzhuang is alone there with no one to rely on. It's too dangerous. I understand your worries. Lan Yunxiao pulled Mu Lingbing back. Hongzhuang is our only daughter. I'm also very worried about her. Once we break through to the Starlight Realm, we'll immediately head to the upper realm. Is that all right? Hearing this, Mu Lingbing nodded in satisfaction. All right. With their current situation, they weren't far from the upper realm. Lan Yunxiao's eyes darkened when he saw that Mu Lingbing had finally left in peace. A woman's intuition was always sharper. It was the same situation back then. He could only hope that nothing bad would happen to Hongzhuang. Unfortunately, in their current situation, they couldn't immediately rush to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen disappeared, Wanyan Han and the others lost interest in exploring. In fact, after the battle with the skeleton army, everyone was already full of fear of this place. They felt uncomfortable staying here for even a moment longer. After their investigation, they found out that this demonic dragon abyss was the place where the skeleton army gathered. Along the way, they also encountered the cultivators of the Azure Dragon School. However, there wasn't much difference between the two sides. Once they encountered the skeleton army, they would definitely be in an extremely difficult situation. By the time they returned to the Raging Flames Gate, the entire team had shrunk by half. Everyone couldn't help but hang their heads in dejection, completely different from the high-spirited appearance they had when they arrived. After this incident, they finally understood how powerful the dark forces were. As it turned out, the power of darkness that they had always looked down upon and despised was actually so powerful. If a darkness attribute cultivator could find their own inheritance, then their strength would definitely be terrifying when they matured. Wanyan Han and Yi Haomiao couldn't help but hope that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were still alive and that they would have a chance to meet again. Chapter 44-21. That damn D family. If it hadn't been for them, Beichen and the others would not have been killed. Wanyan Han could not hide his anger. He could not accept the fact that he had been the cause of all this. Unfortunately, no matter how much he regretted it now, it was useless. Steward Wu was shocked when he heard the news. He had always planned to nurture Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. He never thought that they would lose their lives during this training exercise. Cheng Zonghao was also depressed when he found out that Bailey Hongzhuang had died. He never thought that such an unforeseen event would happen. He had wanted to build a good relationship with Bailey Hongzhuang and learn the art of inscription patterns from her. Things did not go according to one's wishes. Everything had been arranged properly, but something like this had happened. The happiest person was none other than the vice president of the Holy Light Assembly, Gong Tianfeng. Her future had been affected because of Bailey Hongzhuang. She could not take this lying down. She had thought that she would teach Bailey Hongzhuang a lesson in the future. Now that this trouble had disappeared, it could be considered as helping her to vent her anger. Half a month later, Bailey Hongzhuang had unknowingly stayed in the Chaos Ring for half a month. Beichen, how are you feeling? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen. Although his face was still pale, it was much better than before. Wifey, I'm fine. Di Beichen drank the medicine that Bailey Hongzhuang gave him, the corners of his lips raised into a gentle smile. At the same time, Xiao He and Xiao Bai were also taking care of Baisher. We were really lucky this time. If the skeleton army had not appeared at the right time, I'm afraid we would have been finished. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but sigh. This could be considered as the heavens helping them. Otherwise, she would not have been a match for those assassins. Actually, this was not entirely luck. My wife, you had been using the power of light to attract them. Di Beichen stared at Bailey Hongzhuang. The tragedy from back then was still vivid in his mind. One wrong move and they would have been completely annihilated. I wonder who those assassins are. We have never offended such an existence. Why would they want to assassinate us? Bailey Hongzhuang's brows wrinkled. She had never understood this point. Even when I asked them at the last moment, they did not reveal any information. Hearing this, Di Beichen's face sank. Until now, we still don't know if they are coming for us or the Di family. The other party came out of nowhere and wanted to kill all of us without any explanation. It's really hard to determine their target. From the beginning to the end, the other party had never said who they wanted to kill, but one thing was for sure, the person they wanted to kill was among them. So far, there are only 3 people in the upper realm who could have attacked us. The first is the Di family, but we can rule that out now. The second is Gong Tianfeng. Our appearance has affected her development. She hates us, so it's not strange that she wants to attack us. As for the third possibility, it's the Xiao family. Di Beichen's eyes flickered with wisdom. Based on their current experience, there was no fourth possibility apart from these 3. Chapter 44-22. According to this judgment, it's most likely to be the Xiao clan, Di Beichen said in a low voice. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other and immediately understood. It's very likely that Xiao Rojin has sent news of me back to the Xiao clan. They think that my appearance will affect their holy maiden who's about to succeed the throne? That's not strange. It's been many years since the upper realm has seen a light attribute cultivator with full talent. It's said that the holy maiden who's about to succeed the throne isn't really at full talent. On the contrary, you're really at full talent. Once she sends this news back, the Xiao clan will most likely make such a decision. Di Beichen said in a low voice. With the Xiao clan's strength, it was definitely not a problem for them to send out such an assassin. Moreover, the other party's cautious approach was indeed very similar to the style of an aristocratic family. No wonder Xiao Rojin wanted to take the other cultivators away first. Perhaps this is the reason. Xiao Hei's gaze suddenly sharpened. I knew that Xiao Rojin wasn't easy to deal with. She's really despicable. Once the opponent is confirmed, we'll definitely take revenge. Her pitch-black phoenix eyes flashed with thick killing intent. When she thought about how Beichen and Baishir had almost left her forever because of this matter, the killing intent in her heart boiled and couldn't dissipate at all. If others don't offend me, I won't offend them. Since the other party had bullied me, I'll definitely take revenge. Although the other party was very strong and they were no match for them now, as long as they were given a certain amount of time, she believed that they would definitely be able to take revenge. Beichen also narrowed his eyes. His thoughts were the same as Bailey Hongzhuang's. They would definitely take revenge. This time they were beaten to the point where they couldn't fight back, but it would definitely not happen again. Beichen, you should rest for a while. Your injuries are very deep. Although they're almost healed now, you've still damaged your vitality. You need to rest well. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Beichen with concern. The sword strike that he had blocked for her was too deep. Furthermore, after such a long time, he had lost too much blood and his vitality was greatly damaged. In the past few days, although she had thought of ways to help Beichen heal, she still had to rest well. Beichen nodded slightly and said gently and concernedly, "Your injuries aren't light either. You should also rest well. Most of my injuries were superficial, but they're all healed now. Taking care of you and White Lion is the most important thing for me now." Then Bailey Hongzhuang looked at White Lion's condition. She had to admit that White Lion was indeed a beast king. Back then, he had suffered such serious injuries that she almost believed that White Lion would not survive. However, White Lion's recovery ability was also very strong. Now his life was no longer in danger. It was just that he could not use force for the time being. White Lion, you have to rest well too. You've suffered great injuries this time, so you can't move too much. It'll be bad if you aggravate your wounds, understand? Don't worry, master. Bailey Hongzhuang stroked White Lion's warm and soft fur. She still remembered how White Lion had used all his strength to hug her and block an attack for her. It was also this warm. She swore that she would use her life to protect them. Something like this would not be allowed to happen a second time. Xiao Bai and Xiao Xuanzi were both injured. However, their injuries were not as serious as Beichen's and White Lion's. They had already recovered. Chapter 44-23. 7 days later. After confirming that Beichen was safe and sound, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others came out of the Chaos Ring. What they saw was still a black world. Bailey Hongzhuang did not find it strange. Back then, she had escaped into the Chaos Ring in the midst of the skeleton army. In addition, there were teleportation arrays everywhere in the training grounds. As for where they had been teleported to, she was not sure at the moment. I wonder where we are now? Bailey Hongzhuang looked around. The environment where the dark energy gathered was always the same. It was very difficult to determine the direction in such a place. Go in one direction and sense that the dark energy in that direction is the weakest. We should be able to find the way out. Beichen said. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. This was indeed a good idea. Senior brother Wanyan and the others must be very worried about our inexplicable disappearance this time. Bailey Hongzhuang pursed her red lips. Just thinking about it, she could guess that Wanyan Han and Yi Haomiao must be worried about them. I'm afraid everyone must think that we are already dead. Beichen chuckled. Not to mention others, even he himself almost thought that he was dead. When we go back, they must be very surprised. Just thinking about it is interesting. Her elegant red lips curled up slightly. Her pitch-black eyes flashed with a bright light. It was a blessing to have escaped death this time. However, if these assassins were really sent by the Shao family, once we go back, they will know that we are still alive. At that time, I'm afraid that they will attack again. Beichen's eyes darkened. His handsome face was grave. They had to consider this problem. Let's disguise ourselves before going back. At least we have to confirm whether it is them or not. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were sharp. If it was really the Shao family, no matter how powerful the other party was, she would think of ways to make them unhappy. Beichen nodded. Okay. On this point, their thoughts were the same. Revenge was a dish best served cold, but at the very least they had to figure out who their opponent was. The two of them continued forward. Their location was clearly rather deep. They walked for 4 hours without encountering anyone. Master, look, there's someone in front. Xiao Bai pointed not far away, her eyes filled with surprise. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Beichen looked at each other and quickly walked over. A man was lying in a pool of blood. There was a ghastly wound on his back and his clothes were completely dyed red. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around. There was obviously no one else in the vicinity. However, she noticed a trail of blood coming from afar. It was obvious that the man had fled all the way here. It was just that after arriving here he was already exhausted, so he fainted here. Master, is this person still alive? Xiaobai was secretly speechless. With such a terrifying injury he had almost lost all his blood. Bailey Hongzhuang took his pulse and said, "He must have taken some pills before he fainted. Although his injuries are very serious, he is still alive. Wake him up and we should know where this place is," Di Beichen slowly said. Chapter 44-24. After Bailey Hongzhuang had bandaged the most serious wound on the man's back, they then turned the man over. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. This was undoubtedly an extremely handsome man. His facial features were as distinct as if they had been carved out. His angular face was unusually handsome. Even though his face was stained with blood and he looked a little wretched, he was still so handsome that it was impossible to ignore him. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen next to her and unexpectedly felt that the two of them were somewhat similar. "Beichen, I didn't think that there would be a man as handsome as you in this world." Xiaobai was also astonished. Ever since she had met Di Beichen, she had never seen a man more handsome than him. Many men looked quite handsome, but they paled in comparison to Di Beichen. She did not expect that this man in front of her was not inferior to Di Beichen in any way. Di Beichen looked at the man in front of him. His deep eyes lit up slightly and the corners of his lips curled into a faint smile. "Then in your opinion, who is more handsome between me and him?" "In my opinion." Bailey Hongzhuang dragged her voice and looked meaningfully at Di Beichen. Just as Di Beichen's expression gradually turned serious, she suddenly smiled and said, "Of course it's you." Di Beichen raised his eyebrows slightly. "Fortunately, this man is not a threat to me." "What if he is a threat?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked back. "Then I'll take you away. I won't save him." The man's injuries were very serious. Even after Bailey Hongzhuang had helped him apply medicine and treat his wounds, the man was still unconscious. Xiaobai's figure grew bigger and carried the man on his back as they continued forward. It was not until the next day that the man slowly woke up. When the man opened his eyes and saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, his expression was obviously sluggish for a moment. He looked at them in confusion, obviously unable to distinguish the situation for a moment. However, when he noticed the wounds on his body that had been bandaged, he understood what had happened. "I am Di Xiaofeng. Thank you both for saving me." The man clasped his hands together. Even though this action tore open the wounds on his back, he still insisted. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen also smiled and clasped their hands together. "It's fate that we met, young master. You don't have to be so courteous. I will never forget the kindness of saving my life." The man's expression was serious. "I will remember this kindness in my heart and will definitely repay the two of you in the future." "You're too kind." Bailey Hongzhuang took out some water and handed it to Di Xiaofeng. "You've been unconscious for so long and lost so much blood. You must be thirsty." Hearing this, Di Xiaofeng's lips were dry and his throat was smoking. He was indeed thirsty. He took the water and thanked them before gulping it down. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen couldn't help but look at each other. They didn't expect this man to also have the surname Di. It was really strange. This was already the second cultivator with the surname Di that they had met so far. Speaking of which, it really wasn't an ordinary fate. "Young Master Di, I see that the wounds on your body aren't caused by the skeletons. Why are you here alone and heavily injured?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Di Xiaofeng's expression immediately darkened. His gaze was deep and angry. "I came here to find an opportunity, but I don't know why I was assassinated. The other party had a lot of people. Even if I did my best to kill all of them, I couldn't help but be injured." Chapter 44-25. "Miss Lan, young Master Situ, why are you here?" Di Xiaofeng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Situ Beichen suspiciously. "This is the depths of the dark forest. It's very dangerous. If you're not careful, you might lose your life. Usually, people who come here travel in large groups. It's too dangerous for the two of you to be here alone." Ever since they were hunted down, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had changed their appearances and names. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally used the name Lan Yishuan, while Di Beichen used the surname Situ. It was safer this way before they were sure who their opponents were. "Our situation is somewhat similar to young Master Di's. We were also hunted down by our enemies and accidentally came here to avoid a disaster." Di Beichen slowly said, "You said this is the dark forest? You don't know where this place is?" Di Xiaofeng asked in surprise. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Ever since we were hunted down, we went all the way into the depths. In the end, we didn't know where we were. So that's how it is. Di Xiaofeng understood. Who are your enemies? I still have a certain amount of power in this water cloud city. Why don't you tell me and I'll help you take revenge? Young Master Di is too polite. We'll take care of this matter ourselves. Di Beichen said with a smile. Sidhu, I don't know why, but when I first saw you, I felt like we hit it off very well. It's like we're old friends at first sight. I've always made friends based on my feelings. I believe you're a friend worth making. What's more, you saved my life, so there's no need to be polite with me. If you're too polite, it means you don't want to be friends with me. Di Xiaofeng's expression was free and easy. His handsome face rippled with a warm and bright smile, as bright and dazzling as the sun. It affected the moods of the people around him. Seeing Di Xiaofeng so honest, Di Beichen's lips also bloomed into a smile. Xiaofeng, I feel the same way. No matter what, I'm definitely going to be friends with you. That's great. Di Xiaofeng grinned, revealing his white and neat teeth. He patted Di Beichen's chest. It's hard to meet a friend in life. We can't let this fate down. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen and Di Xiaofeng, who seemed to have hit it off in such a short time. She was surprised and happy at the same time. Then according to what you said, you're still not sure who's after you? Di Beichen nodded. Although I have some guesses, I can't be sure for the time being. We can only figure it out when we go back. I understand. Di Xiaofeng understood. Then I'll wait for you to figure out the situation. When you need my help, just let me know. Di Xiaofeng patted his chest as if he was a loyal friend. Di Beichen smiled. Right now, we do need your help with something. What is it? Di Xiaofeng raised his eyebrows. Just say it, I definitely won't decline. Now I need you to lead the way. Di Beichen shrugged. He and Hong Zhuang had been trying to figure out the direction before. Since Di Xiaofeng knew where this place was, he naturally had to give this important task to him. Di Xiaofeng was slightly stunned. After reacting, he chuckled. No problem, leave it to me. Chapter 44-26. Although Di Xiaofeng had woken up, he was still in no condition to travel in his current state, so Xiaobai was still carrying him on his back. When Di Xiaofeng saw Xiaobai, he was also extremely surprised. He had never seen such a contracted beast before, and it could even change its size. It was simply too amazing. It's called the Black Light Spirit. Xiaofeng, have you heard of it? Di Beichen turned to look at Di Xiaofeng. Although Di Xiaofeng did not reveal his identity and background, according to his judgment, Di Xiaofeng's identity should not be simple. This was because there was a noble aura in his actions. With a single glance, one could tell that he was not an ordinary person. Presumably, cultivators with a strong background would know more about the contents of the book. Even now, as the masters of Xiaohe and Xiaobai, they did not know much about them. Di Xiaofeng shook his head, a trace of helplessness appearing on his handsome face. To be honest, I previously thought that I understood the types of contracted beasts very well. I have never met a contracted beast that I did not understand. However, I've never heard of this Black Light Spirit before. It's really an eye-opener for me. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Actually, this is not strange. We only found out that Xiaobai is a Black Light Spirit by chance. Other than that, we did not receive any other information. Di Xiaofeng raised his eyebrows. That's interesting. You were not from Water Cloud City before. Then which city are you from? Rong'an City. That is quite a distance from Water Cloud City. You left a bit too far this time. We went to train with our fellow disciples. We did not expect an accident to happen. In my opinion, after you reach Water Cloud City, don't be in a hurry to leave. You might as well stay here for a while. Sidhu doesn't need to recuperate from his injuries, right? It won't be too late to leave after he fully recovers. It is rare that we feel like old friends at first sight. I will not be staying in Water Cloud City for long. I don't know when we will meet again in the future. What do you think? Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other and nodded. That's good too. Di Beichen's injuries were almost healed, but when they thought about how strong their opponents were, they were not in a hurry to go back. Anyway, revenge was not something that could be done in a short period of time. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang agreed, Di Xiaofeng was very happy. That's great. After 2 days of traveling, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others finally made it out of the dark forest. When they saw that the land in front of them was no longer black, they couldn't help but smile. I'm finally out. Di Xiaofeng sighed with emotion. We only need to continue forward for about 6 hours before we reach Water Cloud City. All right. When we get there, I'll treat you guys to a good meal. As he spoke, Di Xiaofeng couldn't help but look at Xiao Bai. You've been carrying me for the past few days. Tell me what you want to eat later. I'll definitely let you eat to your heart's content. As soon as he said this, Xiao Bai's eyes lit up. Can I order as much as I want? Of course. That's great. Seeing Xiao Bai's happy expression, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle. They had been eating dry rations for the past few days. It had indeed been a long time since they had eaten hot food. Not to mention gluttons like Xiao Bai and Xiao He, even she wanted to eat a good meal. Chapter 44-27. Water Cloud City. Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 3 walked on the wide and flat streets. This was a city that was not inferior to Rong City. Lively hawking and bustling noises entered their ears. This kind of atmosphere filled with smoke and fire made everyone feel happy. The most famous restaurant in Water Cloud City is the Tianyun Residence. The food and wine there are very good. Let's go there. Di Xiaofeng said. This is your territory. We will naturally listen to you. As Di Xiaofeng entered the restaurant, the waiter inside immediately greeted him with a smile. Young Master Di, you're here. Is it the same as usual? Di Xiaofeng nodded slightly. Private room on the 2nd floor. Okay. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. It seemed that it was as Di Xiaofeng said. He was very familiar with Water Cloud City and was a frequent customer of the Tianyun Residence. Private room. Di Xiaofeng very considerately ordered 2 tables of food and wine. One table was for the monsters to eat, and the other table was for them to eat. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, Baisher, Xiao Xuanzi, and Di Xiaofeng's contract beasts were very happy to see the food in front of them. Before Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could say anything, they already couldn't help but eat heartily. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head helplessly. These little guys always revealed their true colors when they saw food. However, looking at Di Xiaofeng's contract beasts, they didn't eat any better than Xiao He and Xiao Bai. At the same time, Di Xiaofeng also saw this scene and couldn't help but chuckle. It seems that we are not the only ones who hit it off at first sight. They are also kindred spirits. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen both nodded. Indeed, it's rare to see contract beasts who hit it off so well with them. Haha. Di Xiaofeng laughed heartily. They eat, we'll drink. Okay. The 3 of them drank to their heart's content. They had just experienced the brink of death and now they really wanted to relax. However, just as they were drinking happily, the door to the private room was suddenly kicked open. Immediately after, a green figure appeared in their line of sight. Emperor Xiaofeng, you still know to come back. Hearing this sudden voice, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were both stunned. In comparison, Di Xiaofeng was very calm, as if he had already expected this result. Bailey Hongzhuang sized up the green-robed woman in front of her. She was about 25 years old, with outstanding looks and an extraordinary temperament. Her clothes were very simple, but they couldn't hide her otherworldly temperament. Her round oval face was flawless, and there was a trace of heroic spirit between her brows. The temperament that lingered around her was cold and distant. Clearly she was an ice beauty. The woman clearly didn't expect that there would be other people in the private room. When she saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, she couldn't help but be stunned. However, the frost on her face didn't dissipate. Di Xiaofeng slowly stood up, and a smile appeared on his lips. Yin, you're here. I know you still care about me. You must have come to find me as soon as you heard the news of my return? I just happened to pass by. Yin, I've known you for so long and I know your personality very well. Don't be so stubborn. Di Xiaofeng clearly didn't mind the woman's coldness. The smile on his face was like the rising sun, as if it could melt the woman's frost at any time. Chapter 44-28. Hearing this, the girl looked at Di Beichen and Situ Zhangfeng indifferently and said, "Hello." Seeing this, Di Xiaofeng helplessly shook his head. "Situ Yixian, she is Bailey Yunyan. She is like this, don't mind her." Her surname is Bailey? Bailey Hongzhuang was surprised. Her surname was rare. Other than in Fengbo, she hadn't met anyone with the same surname in a long time. That's right. Di Xiaofeng nodded. What's wrong? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Nothing, it's just that this surname is rare. This surname is indeed rare. Bailey Yunyan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Xiaofeng. her dark and cold eyes quietly flashing with a trace of complex emotions. As a girl, Bailey Hongzhuang understood the situation very well. Just as she was about to explain, Di Xiaofeng gave her a look, causing her to swallow her words. "I'm leaving first." Bailey Yunyan coldly glanced at Di Xiaofeng, then turned and left. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but ask, "Aren't you going to chase after her?" "No need." Di Xiaofeng waved his hand, "We'll eat our own food." Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows wrinkled slightly. She had some doubts in her heart. Although Bailey Yunyan had only said a few words, she could still feel that her relationship with Di Xiaofeng was not ordinary. "Xiaofeng, if I'm not wrong, you should like this Miss Bailey, right?" Di Beichen smiled. At this moment he felt that he was even more congenial with Di Xiaofeng. Not only were they both surnamed Di, but the girl they liked was also surnamed Bailey. How interesting. "Is it that obvious?" Di Xiaofeng asked helplessly. Di Beichen nodded, "It's very obvious." Di Xiaofeng curled his lips, then sighed and drank the wine in his cup. "It's useless, she's not interested in me. Look at you, you're even younger than me and you're already married. Speaking of which, I'm really ashamed of myself. With your identity and ability, it shouldn't be a problem." Di Beichen's tone was certain. No matter how one looked at it, Di Xiaofeng was undoubtedly extremely outstanding. Such a man would definitely be favored by many girls. So, Di Xiaofeng shook his head. "I'm not bragging, there are many girls who like me. Who told me to like this ice beauty, I can't help it. Miss Bailey Yunyan, Di Xiaofeng, you'll Di Xiaofeng, but as long as you work hard you will." "Sidu, how did you catch up with Yixian back then?" Di Xiaofeng lowered his voice and asked curiously. "Di Xiaofeng, Bailey Xiaofengs and Hongzhuang Xiaofeng Dis. Xiaofeng." Di Xiaofeng nodded in understanding. "Actually, to tell you the truth, I came to Water Cloud City this time to chase after her. Otherwise, I'm afraid I wouldn't have come here at all. Xiaofeng, with your determination, I'm sure there won't be a problem." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "However, if you didn't chase after her, I'm sure Miss Yunyan would be unhappy." Chapter 44-29. Seeing Di Xiaofeng's disappointed look, Bailey Hongzhuang was about to speak, but was stopped by Di Beichen's gaze. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was puzzled. According to her intuition as a woman, this Miss Yunyan must be interested in Di Xiaofeng, and not as heartless as Di Xiaofeng thought. Usually, if a woman with such a cold personality didn't have a good impression of the other party, she wouldn't even look at them. However, this Miss Yunyan rushed over as soon as she heard the news of Di Xiaofeng's return. She was obviously worried about where Di Xiaofeng had gone these days, but she didn't know how to express it. As long as Di Xiaofeng continued to pursue like this, it was expected that he would get the beauty. However, since Di Beichen hinted like this, she believed that he naturally had his own plans, so she didn't say anything more. After Bailey Yunyan walked out of Tianyun residence, she found that Di Xiaofeng didn't follow her. Her delicate and cold face was slightly stiff, and there was a faint feeling of bitterness in her heart. She continued to walk forward as she kept thinking about what happened before. Ever since she met Di Xiaofeng, he began to pursue her. For such a long time, no matter where she went, Di Xiaofeng would follow her. Every time something happened, Di Xiaofeng would always be by her side. Even she didn't know when she started to get used to Di Xiaofeng being by her side. It was as if when he wasn't around, her heart would feel empty. These days, Di Xiaofeng had mysteriously disappeared. At first she didn't care, but later she couldn't help but worry. However, she sent people to inquire for a long time and didn't get any news of Di Xiaofeng. She only thought that Di Xiaofeng had bitterly chased after her to no avail and gave up on her. Today, when she heard that Di Xiaofeng had appeared in Tianyun residence, her heart was filled with joy for no reason and she immediately rushed over. She thought that Di Xiaofeng would be as mischievous as usual and even pester her, but he didn't chase after her. Thinking back to the woman in the restaurant, although her appearance wasn't that outstanding, her pair of sparkling eyes overflowed with light, bright and resplendent, making it hard for people to forget her at a glance. Not only that, but the aura that lingered around him also made people's eyes light up. Was Di Xiaofeng with them these days when he disappeared? After 3 rounds of drinking, Di Xiaofeng's mood was obviously not very good. Even when Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang tried to persuade him to stop drinking, it was useless. They could only watch helplessly as he drowned his sorrows in alcohol and finally got himself drunk. Fortunately, there were rooms upstairs in Tianyun residence. In addition, Di Xiaofeng was familiar with this place, so they directly booked a room upstairs. After Di Beichen moved Di Xiaofeng to the bed, Di Xiaofeng was already drunk and dizzy. He was still mumbling that he wanted to continue drinking. You can have a good sleep here. Bailey Hongzhuang helplessly shook her head. She didn't expect Di Xiaofeng to be so infatuated. After covering Di Xiaofeng with a blanket, Di Beichen turned to Bailey Hongzhuang and said, "Wife, Xiaofeng's injuries haven't healed yet. Will drinking like this affect him?" Chapter 44:30. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Although Di Beichen and Di Xiaofeng's familiarity at first sight was inexplicable, she understood that Di Beichen really cared about Di Xiaofeng. His injury hasn't recovered yet, but it's gradually recovering after my treatment. Although drinking isn't good for the recovery of injuries, Xiaofeng isn't an ordinary person. His physique is very good. As long as he doesn't drink like this every day, there won't be a problem. As for this injury, he just needs to rest for a period of time to completely recover. Hearing this, Di Beichen nodded. Then let's go back. You've worked hard these past few days. Rest well tonight. Okay. As he spoke, Di Beichen opened the door and walked out with Bailey Hongzhuang. As the door closed, Di Xiaofeng, who was still in a daze, opened his eyes. He looked in the direction the two of them left and revealed a trace of a smile on his lips. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's room was next to Di Xiaofeng's. After entering the room, Bailey Hongzhuang poured a cup of tea for Di Beichen and said, "You also know that drinking isn't good for the recovery of injuries, but you still drank so much today. Xiaofeng obviously has something on his mind, so he's drinking to drown his sorrows. How can I not accompany him?" Di Beichen smiled. "What's more, my injury is no longer a problem. Although that's the case, it's better to be careful for a short period of time." Bailey Hongzhuang emphasized. "Thank you for your concern." Di Beichen's lips hooked up into a devilish smile. He reached out and pulled Bailey Hongzhuang to sit on his lap. "My wife's concern for me is really cute." Bailey Hongzhuang's pretty face blushed slightly. "Your injury just got a little better and you're already acting indecent. In front of you, I'm not a gentleman. By the way, why did you stop me from talking when we were eating?" Bailey Hongzhuang turned around and wrapped her arms around Di Beichen's neck. Her bright phoenix eyes rippled with doubt. "In my opinion, that Miss Yun Yin is most likely interested in Xiaofeng. That's why I told him not to chase after me," Di Beichen said frankly. Hearing his words, Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly surprised. "Why is that?" "Since Miss Yun Yin was interested in him, it would be best if he chased after her. Wouldn't it be a pity to give up just like that?" Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's anxious look, Di Beichen gently scratched the tip of her nose with his slender finger. "Wife, I didn't realize you were interested in being a matchmaker before. I'm too lazy to care about ordinary people." Bailey Hongzhuang puffed up her cheeks. "Can't I see that you're very concerned about Xiaofeng?" Di Beichen chuckled lowly. "You heard what Xiaofeng said. He chased after Miss Yun Yin all the way here. Since he's been chasing after her for so long without any results, changing his method midway might lead to unexpected results." "Unexpected results?" Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. "What do you mean?" "Just wait and see." Di Beichen chuckled. "They'll be together sooner or later. Maybe after this incident they'll be together even faster. Since you're so sure, I'll believe you this time. Wife, you should have confidence in me. Otherwise, how could I have pursued you in the first place?" "So, you have a plan?" Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes and threatened. "Tell me, have you ever tricked anyone before?" Chapter 44:31. The next day, when Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen walked out of the room, Di Xiaofeng had already woken up. "Situ Yixuan, let's have breakfast together." Di Xiaofeng greeted them with a smile. "Xiaofeng, you drank so much yesterday, but you don't seem to be feeling any discomfort today." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Di Xiaofeng waved his hand. "I'm so young, I'm just drunk. It's a common occurrence in the past, so I'm already used to it. It's just that I was drunk in front of you yesterday, so I'm a bit embarrassed. I hope you don't mind." "It's nothing." The three of them sat in a private room and ate breakfast. Di Xiaofeng's breakfast was also very exquisite, with a wide variety of dishes and excellent taste. "You were drunk last night, so we didn't know where you were staying, so we let you stay at the inn. Do you plan to go back today?" Di Beichen asked casually as he ate. Di Xiaofeng shook his head. "I'm fine with staying at the inn with you." Bailey Hongzhuang was surprised. "You plan to stay at the inn with us?" "Yes, actually I'm not from Shuiyin City. You know why I came here this time?" Staying at the inn is something I should do, so maybe she'll feel more at ease this way. Hearing Di Xiaofeng say she, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen immediately understood that he was talking about Miss Yunyan. It seemed that Miss Yunyan's rejection for so long had hurt Di Xiaofeng. It wasn't that he didn't like Bailey Yunyan anymore, but he felt that his love for her might have become a hindrance to Bailey Yunyan, so he wanted to change his way of doing things. At the very least, he couldn't make Bailey Yunyan feel uncomfortable because of his love. Bailey Hongzhuang quietly glanced at Di Beichen, but saw that Di Beichen's expression was indifferent. He didn't intend to say anything more about this. Seeing that the atmosphere seemed to have become heavy because of his words, Di Xiaofeng smiled and said, "I'll be the host for the next few days and show you around Water Cloud City. It hasn't been long since you came to the upper realm, so it's boring to cultivate every day. It's good to walk around." "Sure." Di Beichen nodded. "There are indeed many places that we haven't seen yet. It's good to take this opportunity to learn more about the upper realm." "Just in time. Let's go out after breakfast." For the whole day, Di Xiaofeng took Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Hongzhuang to stroll around Shuiyun City. As long as there was any interesting place or delicious food, he would take Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Hongzhuang to try them one by one. Originally, Bailey Hongzhuang was still a little worried about Di Xiaofeng and Di Beichen's situation. But seeing Di Xiaofeng and Di Beichen having so much fun, she simply didn't care. After this day they were really very happy. On the way back they passed by a cloth clothing store. Di Beichen took Bailey Hongzhuang inside, intending to buy a few clothes for her. "Wife, you don't usually have many clothes. Now that you're injured, your clothes can't be used anymore. Since we're here today, let's buy some clothes." Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a deep and gentle gaze. His wife usually dressed very simply, but with her stunning beauty, just casually dressing up was enough to make people unable to take their eyes off her. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. "Okay." Chapter 44-32. "Beichen, there are quite a few men's clothes here. You should pick a few too." Di Beichen walked to the other side of the store to look at men's clothes while Bailey Hongzhuang picked out women's clothes. Di Xiaofeng didn't need to buy these, so he stood at the entrance of the store and looked at a cyan dress. Bailey Yunyan had always liked cyan and most of her clothes were cyan. When he first met Bailey Yunyan, the first thing he noticed was her proud blue figure. Even now, that figure was still deeply imprinted in his mind. After Bailey Hongzhuang picked out a few clothes, she turned around and saw Di Xiaofeng in a daze. She noticed the cyan dress he was looking at and couldn't help but chuckle. "Xiaofeng, this cyan dress really suits Miss Yunyan. You have good taste." Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Xiaofeng came back to his senses and looked away from the cyan dress. His eyes flickered as he said, "I was just thinking about something. No need to hide it. Why don't you buy this cyan dress and give it to Miss Yunyan?" Bailey Hongzhuang's face was filled with a bright smile, and her voice was a bit teasing. She didn't expect Di Xiaofeng to be so carefree, but in this matter, he would be so careful. "Forget it." Di Xiaofeng shook his head. "Even if I give it to her, she won't accept it." However, a smile quickly appeared on Di Xiaofeng's face. "I can't compare to you and Beichen. You're so affectionate that others are envious of you." When Bailey Yunyan passed by, she saw Di Xiaofeng and Bailey Hongzhuang chatting happily in the clothing store. The two people's laughing appearance fell into her eyes, completely flirting. Usually Di Xiaofeng had very little contact with women. With his qualifications, there were countless women who admired him. In fact, when she found out that Di Xiaofeng liked her, she was also surprised. However, at this moment, Di Xiaofeng was chatting happily with this woman. As far as she knew, Di Xiaofeng took this woman to play around in Shuiyun City all day. Other than the person he liked, who else could it be? Bailey Yunyan's heart trembled. This result was really beyond her expectations. She originally thought that Di Xiaofeng wasn't important to her, but for some reason this harmonious scene in front of her was especially dazzling. Bailey Hongzhuang, who was chatting with Di Xiaofeng, looked up and noticed Bailey Yunyan outside. Her outstanding temperament would be noticed at a glance. However, Bailey Yunyan seemed to have felt her gaze and quickly left in the next second. Seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang seemed to suddenly understand what Di Xiaofeng said. According to Di Xiaofeng, Bailey Yunyan didn't care about him at all. Naturally, she wouldn't care where he went. However, whether it was yesterday or today, it was always Bailey Yunyan who took the initiative to appear. "Xiaofeng, I think I saw Miss Yunyan just now," Bailey Hongzhuang said. Di Xiaofeng raised his eyebrows and couldn't help but look outside. However, he didn't see that figure and said, "Did you see wrongly?" Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. "No, Miss Union still cares about you. Don't give up." Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's caring appearance, Di Xiaofeng chuckled and didn't comment. Chapter 44-33. I said I saw Miss Yunyan just now, but Xiaofeng didn't believe me. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged and smiled. Hearing this, Di Beichen's eyes deepened. Di Xiaofeng didn't believe her, but he did. With her personality, even if I left Water Cloud City, she wouldn't care. Why would she come looking for me? Di Xiaofeng chuckled and turned to look at the shopkeeper. How much do these cost? Seeing Di Xiaofeng change the topic, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other and shook their heads. Xiaofeng really underestimated his own charm. Along the way, so many girls have been secretly looking at him. She clearly remembered that when they were playing outside today, many girls couldn't help but follow them. Many of them even looked at her with hostility. She had also felt this kind of gaze when she was with Di Beichen. However, as she became more and more compatible with Di Beichen, it disappeared. In fact, handsome men like Di Beichen and Di Xiaofeng had always been very charming. That's because he likes Miss Yunyan very much. That's why he couldn't help but overlook this. Di Beichen's lips curved into a faint smile. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. Did you do that back then too? That's not true. Bailey Hongzhuang glared at Di Beichen and turned her head away angrily. Di Beichen chuckled. I only have my wife in my heart. How would I have the mind to pay attention to others? Whether it was in the past or now, my heart has never changed. Sweet words. Bailey Hongzhuang pursed her lips, but her mood became cheerful. She tilted her head and saw Di Beichen's serious and affectionate eyes. He was only trying to make her happy, but he was so serious. Di Xiaofeng shook his head and walked over. There's no justice in this world. I'm already so disappointed and you still want to provoke me. Poochie. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. In my opinion, even though Feng Xiaofeng is playing with us, his heart has long gone somewhere else. Why don't you go find your Miss Yunyan? It's getting late. Di Xiaofeng looked outside and said, I'm still a bit hungry, let's hurry back to the Sky Charm residence. Seeing Di Xiaofeng change the topic so obviously, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen also chuckled. They simply didn't expose him and the three of them returned to Tianyun residence together. Night gradually fell. Water Cloud City was still very lively, and the Heavenly Charm residence was still bustling with noise. Just as the three of them were about to finish their meal, Bailey Yunyan unexpectedly appeared again. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at the green-robed woman in front of them with a trace of surprise in their eyes. Obviously, they did not expect her to come directly. Di Xiaofeng was also surprised to see Bailey Yunyan. He didn't expect her to take the initiative to look for him. Yunyan, what are you doing here? Di Xiaofeng stood up and asked. Bailey Yunyan looked at Di Xiaofeng in front of her, then looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. Her expression was complicated. She bit her lip, her cold face showing some hesitation. Finally she said, When are you coming back? Hearing this, Di Xiaofeng raised his eyebrows and said, Why should I go back? In the next second, Di Xiaofeng's lips quietly curved into an evil smile. Don't tell me, you agree? Chapter 44-34. If there's nothing else, then don't stay in Shuiyun City any longer. Go back. After saying that, Bailey Yunyan didn't say anything else. She turned around and left immediately. Looking at Bailey Yunyan's departing figure, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. It seemed that this Miss Yunyan's personality wasn't just a little cold. Sidu Yixuan, you two stay in Tianyun residence first. I'll go over. Di Xiaofeng put away his previous joking expression, and a serious look appeared on his face. Have you changed your mind? Bailey Hongzhuang asked with a faint smile. Di Xiaofeng shook his head. With Yunyan's personality, she wouldn't have come looking for me unless something had happened. Now that she's here, something must have happened over there. I'll go over and see if I can help. Di Beichen nodded slightly. Go quickly. You don't have to worry about us here. Seeing Di Xiaofeng's departing figure, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other and smiled. Di Xiaofeng really knew Bailey Yunyan well. The other party had only said a few words and he had already guessed it. This understanding and concern was enough to show his feelings. Beichen, Xiaofeng isn't here right now. Let's go buy some herbs. For the entire day, no matter what it was, Di Xiaofeng would pay for everything. No matter how much she and Di Beichen refused, It was useless, so they could only choose not to buy. Although Di Xiaofeng had always said that this life-saving grace must be repaid with a spring, and spending a little money was nothing, they treated Di Xiaofeng as a friend. They didn't want to take advantage of him like this. This time they used a lot of herbs to recuperate from their injuries. In order to prevent any future situations, they had to be prepared first. Okay. The two of them asked the waiter and came to the largest herb shop in Shuiyun City. They smoothly bought some of the herbs they needed. The shopkeeper was a man around 40 years old. When he saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen buying a lot of herbs in one go, he immediately became interested in chatting. Could it be that the two of you are buying so many medicinal herbs to treat that Miss Bailey? Miss Bailey Hongzhuang? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. Which Miss Bailey? Bailey Shi, Miss Shi. The shopkeeper said matter-of-factly, today Miss Shi has already fainted. Basically, all the famous doctors in the city have gone over, but until now there hasn't been any effect. The bounty is getting higher and higher. In the past we couldn't tell what's so great about this Lady Shi. However, a few days ago Lady Yun Yan, who claimed to be her elder sister, came. Now all the doctors and alchemists in the city are hoping to cure Miss Shi. This is a big business. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at Di Beichen. Di Xiaofeng was right, something did happen to Miss Yun Yan. May I know where Miss Shi lives? Bailey Hongzhuang inquired. The two of you also want to try your luck? The shopkeeper chuckled and pointed to the door. After you go out, head east. You'll see a very lively place at the entrance. That's Miss Shi's residence. Thank you, shopkeeper. After leaving the herb shop, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen headed east. This Miss Shi is Miss Yunyan's younger sister. No wonder Miss Yunyan came to find Xiaofeng today. She probably doesn't know what to do. Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly understood. Looking at the situation, this Miss Shi's illness is very serious. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.